Welcome back to Mutat Gaming, and this is a Life Cleric build for early access, patch 9. Now, before we get into that build, let's talk a little bit about the future of the channel moving forward, or at least when the game is at full release. The future of this channel at the beginning of full release is multi-classing. I think I could bring a lot to the community as far as what options there are for multi-classing. Now, I realize multi-classing is not available in early access, but they did say they will have it in full access. Now, those of you who have played Dungeons & Dragons are probably pretty familiar with multi-classing and what can be done. The only thing is, without seeing what's all available at full release right now, I really can't cover the options at this point. For instance, I really don't think Elven Accuracy is going to be there, so maybe a crit build would be something that's not really a good option to start talking about. As far as your bread and butter 2 levels paladin and the rest sorcerer and just smiting all the time and using your sorcery points to buy back spell slots for smite, that's going to be okay, but it's probably not going to be as good as what it is in Dungeons & Dragons, because I don't know for sure if they're going to have Booming Blade cantrip or Green Flame Blade cantrip, and those really take that setup to the next level. And then, but there are some easier things to consider if you're not looking for like a power character, but maybe just the simple concept of like a very basic multi-classing thing is if you're going to create a caster that's going to be concentrating. Now, do you want armor or do you want spell slots? So a warrior or a sorcerer both give you proficiency in your constitution save, and your constitution save is what's rolled when you make a concentration check. So if you go warrior, you get some better armor options, but you are 1 level behind on your spell progression. Now, if you're not worried about armor and you're going to go with whatever armor the spellcasting class gives you, sorcerer gives you that option of getting a proficiency in Constitution without sacrificing spell slots. So those are some of the things we'll talk about and we'll really get into once the game is at full release. And I just wanted, if you like what you see, I just wanted to give you an update of where this channel is heading and what the plans are for the future. So, moving on from that, let's talk about our Life Cleric. Kind of somewhat inspired by the fact that I'd like to think outside of the box of your typical class. We're going to make a Life Cleric, but we're almost really making our own class. The biggest problem with a Life Cleric is, or any cleric for that matter, is their cantrip. Once you spend all your spells, your cantrip's pretty much your bread and butter. The cleric only gets 1 attack, so going melee and using the mace all the time, you're only getting 1 attack. There's not much you could do to boost the damage, especially trying to split stat points between maybe strength and wisdom, or you could take a magic initiate druid so that you can use shillelagh to use your wisdom to attack. But there's a lot of things that could be done to do that melee druid. But today I thought maybe we'd try something a little different, and we would go with high elf and make our melee based on that cantrip. I realize right now I have the firebolt cantrip showing, but we'll go through that as we go through the process. So really we're making a cleric warlock, if you think about it, because a cleric, pretty much their bread and butter in combat is their cantrip. Now we're going to bring in a lot more utility than a warlock with this setup. But again, for any caster, the cantrip's going to be your bread and butter, especially when you think Are we going to be able to kind of sleaze the game like we are now with just taking long rest whenever we want to get our spell slots back? Is that going to be harder once the game gets on full release? Now, in Dungeons and Dragons campaigns, you kind of want to, think about what spells you're going to be casting and whether or not it's worth spending that spell slot for that particular moment in the fight, because those are a limited resource. Now, your cantrips, they're not limited. Cast them all you want. So that's something to think about when you're doing a caster. And I'm off on a tangent. So let's get back into this. I went with a sage background just because it fits with our intellect going to be high. Race, I went with high elf. Now you can do half elf or high elf. I just prefer the elf high elf and not the half elf high elf, because we get keen senses, which you are proficient in perception, which if you played the game for any amount of time, perception is the most used skill. You are rolling perception all the time. The cantrip I'm going to use, because I want this to be melee, is Shocking Grasp. And if you've seen my ranger video, there is a pair of boots that we'll be wearing and some shenanigans with casting Create Water quite a bit. The other options for our DPS will be using scrolls and using arrows that provide some type of area of effect, because if we miss, we still get the splash damage on the ground. But our bread and butter, again, is going to be the cantrip, and we're going to be fighting in melee as a frontliner. Appearance, pick what you want. Now, the class, the subclass for this class, Cleric, the subclass that we're picking is Life Domain. Pick whatever deity you want, doesn't matter. Now, when you're looking at what other cantrips to take, we're getting rid of this one. They get a dex save. Our wisdom's not going to be very good, so there's no point in having that. Now that leaves you either thaumaturgy or light. I'm going to go ahead and go with thaumaturgy just for some help with conversations. Guidance, absolutely, it's great. Resistance, I really don't use this one a whole lot, but it could come in handy for a couple of fights. But we'll go for light just to help out any of our group members who don't have dark vision. As far as what 2 spells am I starting with, we're going to go with Healing Word, our bonus action, and another bonus action, Shield of Faith, and that'll open us up to be able to use our cantrip and a bonus action each turn if need be. As far as skills, Religion, Insight, we get our Perception, Arcane History, see we get +5. Religion +5. We could go, take away Insight and go with Persuasion just to help ourselves out in conversations. As far as stats, I went with Dumping Strength, 14 Dex. We are going to be wearing medium armor. There's a chest piece in the game that gives us advantage on our concentration checks. That'll help us with our Shield of Faith. That'll also help us if we want to use Spirit Guardians. Now, yes, we only have a +1 to our Wisdom. Most of them are going to pass their save, but they will still take damage, so it's not completely a loss. I always look at spells that are, if they make their save, they take half damage, as if they miss their save, that's a crit. Because in melee, if you roll a natural 20, you get a crit. So that's the way you're going to look at that. If they miss their save, that's a crit. So you do double damage, and just assume you're doing half damage of whatever you roll all the time. Constitution for health. We're bumping intellect when we get our ASI. At 4, we'll be moving this to 18. Wisdom stays at a 13, and Charisma at a 10. The following after this will be some gameplay footage. I will probably put some music on in the background and maybe bring up a few of the leveling. I got to 3 at the time of this video, and then we'll do a second video showing the rest.
Tell me, who do you dream of at night?
Right here at level 2 on our Life Cleric, we get a few things. We get our Channel Divinity to turn undead. We get Preserve Life, invoke healing energy that restores your allies, and we get to prepare some spells. Now we're going to pick up Create or Destroy Water, because if our enemies are wet, they're going to take more damage from our cantrip. We're not going to be able to use the command spell because our charisma isn't high enough, so we're going to grab our shield, and we still have our healing word. Check. Okay, let's level up for level 3. We get Aid, which is a nice +5 to our health. We get Lesser Restoration as our subclass feature spells. Those are kind of nice. For our spells, we're going to keep Healing Word, Create or Destroy Water, Shield of Faith, and then for a second level spell, all these ones that have Save, Enhanced Ability is an option that we could use. Whole Person, again, they get to make a Wisdom save. Our Wisdom score is not that high, so obviously we'd be wasting a spell slot. Prayer of Healing, you can use this one out of combat for kind of a short rest, but it doesn't gain the perks of resetting things that reset on a short rest, like Warlock spell slots. Protection from Poison, there is at least one fight that this really becomes important, and the Silent spell. I am in melee, so odds are if I'm silencing somebody, it affects me unless they're at ranged. So for now, I'm just going to pick Protection from Poison, just for that particular fight. Actually, I'm going to go with Silent. I think that'll be used more often.